please refer to CHM 3401, yeah, your analytical chemistry. And also we can calculate the charge of our protein. Is very important, yeah, because depending on the charge of our protein will be either soluble or insoluble at certain pH. It's very important for you to know the total charge of your protein at certain pH, because if you wrongly calculate the charge of your protein, then when you put your protein at certain pH, your protein will become insoluble. It becomes like rock, you know, it will deposit at the bottom of the test tube, which is very important when you work with molecules. For example, when you work with vaccine, you know, you want to make sure that your vaccine is soluble at certain pH, for example, at pH 7. So when the vaccine is injected to someone, you know, so it's still in its soluble form. So you have to make sure that the protein in your vaccine has certain charge. Yeah, it has its charge at the pH that you use in the vaccine. Yeah, and also hydrophobicity. Yeah, is very important as well. If your protein is too hydrophobic, yeah, then it become insoluble in water. Yeah, so it will affect the function. Yeah, it will affect the application of your protein. If you make a vaccine that consists of protein, if it's too hydrophobic, then when you inject to someone, it will be painful. Ya, sakit. Sebab dia too hydrophobic, dia tak soluble. Ya, so masa dia cucuk tu dia sakit. So make sure you have to know whether your protein is hydrophobic or not. Yeah. And also how to calculate the molar extinction coefficient is very important when you want to detect, when you want to analyze your protein using spectrophotometer. Yeah. So all these physical properties can be calculated. Yeah. And if you know the sequence, the primary structure of your protein. Right. The first thing is molecular weight. Yeah. This is very important. Yeah. It's very important to know the molecular weight of your protein, how big your protein is. Is it small protein, medium-sized protein, or big protein? Yeah. And I have a story about Peter Agre. Yeah. Later on, once we finish, once I finish explaining about molecular weight, how he discovered a water channel. Yeah. How he discovered water channel, and the discovery is it's just by accident. Yeah, when he observed the molecular weight of unknown protein. Yeah, I have the story about that. I will explain to you how he discovered the protein channel. Yeah. All right. So molecular weight refers to the mass of a molecule. Yeah. So basically, it's a sum of the mass of each amino acid. So kalau you ada protein, yeah, it consists of amino acid. So you have the mass of each amino acid, ya. You nampak dekat sini, ya. For each amino acid, ya, A, C, D, E, F, G, etc. That's the single letter code of the protein, yeah. So as I have told you in my previous lecture, that I encourage you to memorize, yeah, to remember the single letter code of amino acids. Yeah, A is alanine, C is cysteine, D is aspartic acid, you know, etc. Yeah, and they are molecular weight. So if you have a protein that consists of different amino acids, yeah, that consists of several amino acids, then by knowing the molecular mass, the molecular weight of each amino acid, you can calculate the molecular weight of your protein. So this is the experimental way to know the molecular weight of your protein, yeah, by electrophoresis. Yeah, again, as chemistry student, you are expected to know what electrophoresis is. If you forgot, refer to your CHM 3401. Yeah, so basically, this subject is application of what you have learned in compulsory subjects. Yeah, so this is how you implement those knowledge that you have learned. Yeah. So this is the electrophoresis. Yeah, this is the experimental way to know the size of the protein. Yeah, the size of the a polymer of amino acid that you have. Yeah? The name is quite long, SDSPH. Normally, we just call it SDSPH. The full name is sodium dodecyl sulfate polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. Yeah, so that's the long name of SDSPH. Normally, I just call it SDSPH. So we use this SDSPH to see the size of a protein. Yeah, the electrophoresis can separate the protein depends on the molecular weight. So normally in the sample that we are dealing with, it has several proteins. Yeah, it's a mixture of several proteins, and these proteins have different molecular weights. So we can separate all these proteins depends on their molecular weights. Yeah. So kalau kita letak dalam gel, yeah, this one is gel, yeah, made of polyacrylamide, yeah. So that's why it's called PAGE, yeah, polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. So this is gel. So you can see several bands, a lot of bands, yeah. Each band corresponds to one protein. Each band. So you can see here, yeah, in these samples that you run in SDSPH, for each sample, it has several proteins, not only one, not only two, not only 10, but a lot. Yeah. Normally we see this scenario when you run biological sample, like blood, you know, human liquid that you take from human, you know, body liquid, you know, urine or whatever, you know, because human body liquid consists of multiple proteins, and each protein has different molecular weight. So you can separate them, yeah, into a single band, which each band tells you that you have this protein with this molecular weight. Ya, kita selalu letak sampel dari atas, ya. Yang protein yang kecil dia akan lari cepat, dia akan sampai bawah, ya. So yang bawah ni, ya, yang you nampak dekat bawah ni, ya, bands dekat bawah is protein with a small molecular weight, ya. And then you can see all the bands in the middle, ya. These are proteins with medium-sized molecular weight. Dan yang atas ni, yang lari dia lambat, ya. So they stay at the top of the gel. They are proteins with high molecular weight, ya. So the way they travel in this gel really depends on their molecular weight. Ya. Yang kecil dia akan lari lagi laju, ya. Dia sampai dekat bawah. Yang dia besar, they will stay at the top of the gel. So how we run this experiment? Yeah. So before putting our protein in the gel, we have to heat the protein, yeah, in the presence of SDS. SDS is a detergent, yeah. Sodium dodecyl sulfate is a detergent, yeah. And with heat, it will open the structure of the protein, yeah. Because what? Because why we have to heat our protein and why we have to add detergent? Because if we run the SDSPH and our protein in this shape, yeah, in this shape, dia macam folded, so it will affect the way the protein travels in the gel. It will affect the way protein migrates in the cell, in the gel. Yeah. So we heat the protein by adding by adding a detergent so that we open the structure of the protein. Yeah. So once we open the structure of the protein, the speed of protein migration only depends on its size. Ya, tapi kalau kita tak panaskan, kalau kita tak letak detergent, the protein will be folded. Ya, the protein will form a folded structure. So the way the protein migrates in the gel depends on the size, and it depends on the conformation of the protein. Ya. So it doesn't really reflect the size. Nanti kita tak akan nampak berapa size dia sebab the protein is folded. Tapi kalau kita buka protein tu, we denature the protein, then it lose the structure. So the speed, the speed the speed of migration, the speed of how the protein travels in the gel only depends on the size of the protein. It doesn't depend on the structure of the protein. Ya, sebab kita nak tengok dia punya molecular weight kan, kita nak tengok dia punya size. So that's why we denature the protein using heat and detergent. Yeah. So this is how we run the experiment. Yeah. So we create a gel. Yeah, and the gel consists of two parts. Yeah, stacking gel and running gel. So stacking gel is where we put the sample. Yeah, and running gel is where the protein will migrate, will travel. And as you can see here, big proteins will stay at the top, small proteins will go to the bottom. Yeah. And then gel ni kita letak dalam buffer, ya, special buffer, ya, and we put in a container consists of glass, ya, and we put electricity, ya, because it's electrophoresis, ya, so we have to use electricity here. So negative electrode at the top, positive electrode at the bottom. So your sample will go from top to bottom, ya. Sebab elektron kan, elektron dia pergi daripada negatif ke positif. So your protein will go according to the direction of the electron migration, ya, dari atas pergi bawah. So this is the practical aspect, ya. So we run at 200 volts for 30 atau 30 to 40 minutes, and this is the buffer yang kita guna, ya, pH 8.3. So it's a bit base because we use tris, ya, tris base, glycine, and SDS. SDS is what? Ingat tak SDS tadi apa? What is SDS?
Sodium rhodesium sulfate polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis.
SDS is sodium rhodesium sulfate. Polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis is H, ya. So SDS is detergent, ya, detergent. So dalam buffer ni dia ada tris, ya. Tris is a base, ya. And then glycine, ya. Glycine is to stabilize the protein, ya. And then SDS. SDS is the detergent, ya. Why we put detergent? Because, kenapa kita guna detergent? Because dah lupa dah. What is the purpose of detergent here? What is the purpose of SDS here? Baru je.
To unfold the protein.
Exactly, yes, to unfold the protein. Nanti ada soalan lagi, why we have to unfold the protein? Pening kepala. We unfold the protein because
so the movement of the protein depends only on its size. The gel.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, correct. Yeah, so that the migration of the protein will only depend on the size of the protein. Yeah, so it won't depend on the structure of the protein. Ya, sebab kita tak nak tengok structure, kita nak tengok berapa size protein tu. Ada jenis electrophoresis yang kita tak letak SDS, ada. Ya, kita panggil dia as native, ya, native page. So ini SDS page. So yang lagi satu kita panggil native page. So kita tak letak SDS, kita tak panaskan. We don't heat the sample. Ya. We run native page not to see the size of the protein, bukan. Kita run native page to see ada berapa protein dalam tu. Itu je. Ya, selalunya kalau dulu-dulu when I did my PhD, ya, I run through, ya. Satu, I run native page before I run SDS page, ya, untuk tengok protein tu ada tak dalam tu. Alright. And then once I know that the protein is there, and then I run SDS page. Ya. Tapi sekarang, ya, the younger generation, ya, they are too lazy to run to electrophoresis. They just directly run SDS page. Ya. So in terms of knowledge, they don't know that there is another electrophoresis. Kita tak letak SDS, kita tak panaskan sampel kita. Ya, terus run gel. We call it as a native page. Ya. Alright. Okay, so yeah, so this is the schematic picture how the mixture of protein migrate inside the gel. Yeah, so ini yang macam ular ni dia gel, ya. and then you can see at the top you have a mixture of protein, yeah, with different sizes. Yeah? Once you on the electricity, then this mixture of proteins will travel, yeah, will migrate with different speeds. Ya, yang kecil dia akan lari lagi laju, ya, dia sampai bawah, ya. Yang tengah nih is medium size protein, yang atas nih is big size, ya, protein with large size. They will stay at the top. Protein ini tak ada warna, protein ini tak ada color. So once you finish the electrophoresis, of course you want to see the protein, right? Then you need to stain. You kena letak warna, ya. So the kind of stain that we use is chemical staining, ya. Chemical staining. So it detects protein based on how the protein bind to the staining molecule. Ya. So kita guna dye lah, ya. Kita guna pewarna. Yang mana pewarna ini dia akan it will react with the protein. So you can see the color. Ya. So there are two common types of dye agent. Ya. Staining agent yang kita guna ini ada dua. Ya. Yang pertama is the most common staining agent, which is Commercy Brilliant Blue, yeah, or CBB. Yeah. From the name, you know that the color is blue. Yeah, Commercy Brilliant Blue. Yeah. So the CBB can detect about 1 microgram of protein in a normal band. So if you can see the band after you run the electrophoresis and then you letak staining agent, yeah, if you can see the band, you know that at least you have 1 microgram of protein there. Yeah. But sometimes there are proteins with low quantity, yeah, with low amount, especially when you are dealing with sample from organism, yeah, from human, from animal, yeah, there are proteins, yeah, with low amount, which CBB cannot detect, yeah, because the amount is less than 1 microgram, yeah. In that case, you have to use different staining method, which is you have to use silver, yeah, and then the color is brown, yeah, the color is brown. It's more sensitive, yeah, it's about 100 times more sensitive. It can detect as low as 10 nanogram of protein, 10 nanogram of protein, ya. So dia more sensitif. Sekarang macam COVID, ini akan so dia less sensitive. But in most cases, we start with CBD. In most cases, yeah. If we don't see the protein that we want, and then we go to silver staining, then it will detect the protein that cannot be seen when you stain the protein using CBB, ya. And then lepas you letak warna, of course kita nak quantify kan. Yeah, you want to quantify the proteins, then we use the densitometry. This is one example, yeah, one example of protein stained by CBB. Ya, jadi warna you nampak biru kan, maknanya dia guna CBB lah. Ya. Yang sebelah kiri ini kita panggil as marker, ya, molecular weight standard. Kita boleh beli, ya, kita boleh beli. It's a mixture of proteins with different sizes. Ya. So masa you run dekat gel, dia akan separate into different bands, and each band corresponds to specific molecular weight. So kita tahu berapa size dia. Ya. Ini kita boleh beli. Ya. Kita boleh beli daripada supplier. Ya. And then we know from the manual which band corresponds to which molecular weight. Nah, yang kanan nih, yang dua band ini is our sample. Our sample, So nampaknya dalam sampel ni kita tak banyak protein lah. I think we have only one protein. And the molecular weight is about, what is the molecular weight? Can you estimate the molecular weight of these two bands? You can compare to the marker on the left. Kalau you compare, rasanya berapa dia punya molecular weight? Approximately.
150.
Maybe lebih kot, sebab dia in between 150 and 250. Ya, di atas sikit. Ya. So that's why it's just approximate, ya. Approximate, ya. Kalau kita nak tahu betul-betul berapa size dia, kita kena buat mass spec. Ya. We have to do mass spectrometry. Ya. So we can, this is approximate value, ya. Maybe around 200. Ya, around 200. Okay. Because in between 150 and 250. Ya. Dan from the quantity kita nampaknya tak banyak, sebab dia blur kan, dia blur tak banyak And how to exactly know the amount of protein, we can use densitometry, So macam kita guna spectrophotometer lah. So we have to have a set of proteins with known amount, And then kita ambil dia punya intensity, guna densitometry, And then this is your protein lah. This is your protein. Macam sini kan kita nampak dia macam blur-blur sikit, so we can predict lah that the quantity of your protein, All right. Before I continue with isoelectric point, I will show you. You remember in my introduction, You remember Peter Agree? Peter Agree is the one who discover water channel. Ingat lagi kan yang I show you the video how the water migrates inside the channel, And because of that water channel, our kidney works. Without water channel, our kidney will not work. Without water channel, our kidney will not work. Without water channel, our blood cell will burst. And without water channel, the pH of our body will not stay at pH 7. And as you still remember from my first lecture, that water channel is very specific. It will only transport water molecule, and H+, cannot even enter the water channel. And you know why. You know why. From my lecture, you know why. Because water molecule enters water channel in a very specific way that will stop H+ from entering. So water channel really control the pH of our body. And the person who discovered that is Peter Agree, and he got Nobel Prize in 2003, in chemistry. But he's not chemist. He's medical doctor. He's medical doctor, and he's doing research on blood cell. He's doing research on blood cell. So so how he discovered water channel? Why he discovered water channel? Why he discovered water channel is because one day he did electrophoresis on red blood cell. He is studying the RH, right? Rhesus, right? Some of you got rhesus positive, rhesus negative, So rhesus positive means your blood is similar to monkey punya punya blood, because RH, rhesus means monkey, So Peter Agree at that time he's studying the RH factor in the red blood cell, the rhesus factor in blood cell. So he did electrophoresis to see what kind of proteins in our blood cell. So this is what he did. So he published a paper in 1987. I'll show you the paper. It's a very historical document. So this membrane protein. So the size of the protein is 30,000. And this protein is in the erythrocyte, in the red blood cell. So he report lah, he report his finding, and this is the gel. This is the gel. Tahun 1987 diorang publish tak ada color lagi. This is the gel. So as you can see, this is the gel. SDS page. SDS page. And you can see RHIMP, nampak RHIMP. This is the protein that he's looking for. This is the protein that he's looking for. However, you nampak tak dekat bawah ni? Ada dekat bawah ni, Size dia below 29, Size dia below 29, ada dekat bawah ni. And in terms of quantity is quite banyak juga. And he doesn't know what is that. This is the protein that he's looking for, RHIMP, Size dia 30, 30 kilodalton, meaning 30,000 gram per mol, So unit kita guna dalton, unit ya, kita guna Dalton ya. Actually it's gram per mole. Tapi kenapa kita guna Dalton? Sebab kita guna electricity dalam electrophoresis. So that's why kita guna unitnya Dalton. Which in chemistry is equal to gram per mole. It's just the way biochemists wants to have their own unit. Ya, kita tak nak guna unit yang sama dengan apa yang orang kimia guna. Ya, biochemist wants to use different unit. Ya, and also why we use Dalton, because the molecular weight that we got from gel it's approximate value. Ya, nanti masa kita dah buat mass spec, ya, masa kita dapat exact molecular weight baru kita guna gram per mole. Ya, tapi masa kita run gel, ya, sebab kita agak-agak kan, agak-agak around 30, kita guna Dalton. Because this is not an exact value of molecular weight, it's just approximate. Okay, go back to this paper. It's a very historical paper published in 1987. So this is what he discovered. This is the protein that he wants. Ya, around 30 ya, RHIMP. Tapi dia nampak ada protein around 28 dekat bawah ni. Dan dia banyak juga. Ya. Lepas tu masa dia stain protein ni, ya, you tengok sebelah kanan ni, ya, silverstein and commercy blue, ya, baru je tadi saya jelaskan kan silverstein and commercy blue. Beza dia commercy blue ni less sensitive, ya. Protein yang 28, yang 28 ni dia nampak dalam yang dekat bawah ni, yang dekat bawah ni, dalam commercy blue tak nampak, tapi dalam silverstein dia nampak. Yang dekat bawah ni 28, So RHIMP is the one that he wants. Yeah, then he did not ignore it. Kalau kita nak cari something, ada benda yang kita tak cari, selalunya kita ignore kan. Kita agree tak? Dia study benda tu. Kalau kita buang masa je kan, kita nak 30,000, ini 28,000, apa benda ni kan, buang masa je nak study. That's the thing that differentiate ordinary people from extraordinary people. Ordinary people, they just stick to what they want. Extraordinary people, they have this curiosity. They have something that they don't want. They have something that they don't expect, but they still study it. They still study. Okay. So a year after, in 1988, he published another paper that specifically study what this 28,000 protein is, from erythrocyte, and he studied further, and he did a very detailed study on this unknown protein, and he discovered that this protein is abundant a lot, is abundant in red blood cell and in kidney. Ada dua tempat di mana this protein is abundant, ada banyak. One is in red blood cell, another one is in kidney. That's very interesting. Sebab apa? Kidney itu apa? Kidney is the place where the filtration happen. Kidney is the place where our body remove the toxic, the toxic agents from our blood. Filtration happen. Maknanya apa? A lot of water there, a lot of water in our kidney. Tu yang kalau you all kurang minum, your kidney sakit kan. Lepas tu you ignore it, and then you dapat batu lah dalam kidney. Because kidney is the place where the filtration process happens. So it involves a lot of water there, just like red blood cell. Red blood cell, it needs water. So he discovered that, benda ni dia jumpa dekat dua tempat. One is dekat red blood cell, another one is dekat kidney. And then his conclusion, this molecule could be something that involves in the transportation of water. That's what his hypothesis lah. And then again, he did electrophoresis. He stained it using commercy blue and silver stain. Apa beza dia? You nampak more bands, right, in silver stain, right? You nampak more protein in silver stain. And he point this lane, you nampak arrow ni kan, yang sebelah kiri ni, dalam commercy blue tak nampak. Dalam silver stain nampak. Ini satu hal, satu benda Yang again, most scientists, they are too lazy. I told you before, ya. Sekarang nih, ya, especially I saw my student lah, when they run electrophoresis, they just stain the gel using Comasi blue. Dah, nobody did silver staining anymore. Nobody. During my time, I always buat dua benda, ya, Comasi blue dengan silver stain. Sebab apa? Sebab ada banyak yang you tak nampak dalam Comasi blue, baru keluar kalau you stain dia guna silver. But nowadays, sebab nak cepat kan. Most students just stain their gel using Comasi blue. That's it. Oh, tak nampak doktor, tak ada protein. Okay, bye-bye. But you see, if Peter agree at that time is lazy enough and did not stain his gel using silver stain, he will not find the water channel. Sebab apa? Sebab water channel ni baru keluar masa dia stain guna silver stain. You see? It's very thick band here when he stain the gel using silver stain. Yang dalam Comasi blue tak nampak. Yeah. And this is unknown protein. Dia langsung tak tahu. Langsung tak tahu proteinnya apa, but he is determined enough to ask around, you can see here, if you read this paper, he used a lot of techniques, yeah, different techniques to unravel, yeah, to identify who is this guy, siapa orang ni, apa benda ni, yeah? And even in this paper, he did not say that this is a water channel, yeah. He just say that, well, I discovered this protein in red blood cell and in kidney. But later on, in his next papers, he is able to identify that this is a water channel, and he got Nobel Prize in 2003. So what we can learn from here? What we can learn from here? One. Do not ignore if you have something unexpected in life. You have something unexpected in life, because life is like a box of chocolate, right? Life will give you everything. Yeah. And sometimes you have something that you don't expect. Don't ignore it. Pay attention, including your mistakes. We human, we do mistakes all the time, right? And it's normal that we tend to ignore our mistake. We want to forget our mistake. Mistakes, everything unexpected, it happens in life to give you a lesson. If you pay attention, you will learn something new, or even you will find something interesting out of it. Just like what Peter Agri did. If he choose to ignore the 28,000 band because he's looking for 30,000 band, if he ignore 28,000 band, he will not get Nobel Prize. He will not get Nobel Prize. But he choose to study something unexpected from the gel. And he chose to study it even further. He's not satisfied with Comasi blue. He tried silver stain, and he saw the bands that he couldn't see in Comasi blue. Yeah. So one, don't ignore the unexpected. Embrace your mistake. Embrace the unexpected things. Sometimes we will find something more interesting. All right. So this is something that you can learn from him. That you can learn from this a story of how he discovered water channel. Second, always have curiosity. Always wants to know about something. Always have this curiosity. Yeah. If he's not curious, yeah, because 28,000 is something that he did not expect, right? But because he's curious, apa benda ni, apa 28,000 ni, then he discovered water channel. Yeah. So always have this curiosity, This is something that differentiates ordinary people from extraordinary people. Sometimes they're not smart. Yeah, sometimes they're not smart. And from my experience, yeah, all those people who are successful in life, sometimes they're not smart. Yeah. Sometimes their CGPA is not even first class one, below 3.6, below 3.5, But one thing that I realized, they have this curiosity. Diorang nak tahu tau, benda ni apa, benda ni apa, benda ni. And they always learn. Because they have this curiosity, they always learn. So that's why they become smarter. In terms of CGPA, cukup makan je. Yeah? My CGPA, when I did my first degree, is only 3.12 with 2 Ds in my transcript. I have 2 Ds in organic chemistry in my academic transcript. But I have this curiosity. I always want to know. So that's why I continue, you know, I did my PhD, and then it's not enough. I did another level of, you know, after PhD, I did postdoc. Yeah, not many people during that time. I'm the first student in UPM who did postdoc. Yeah? Even when I did postdoc in UPM, they have to create that post for me, because I told my supervisor, Prof, I want to do postdoc because I'm not satisfied. I have this curiosity. I want to study more. Okay, UPM has to create that post for me, postdoc. Yeah, so I'm the first person in UPM who did postdoc, and then I continue doing postdoc in the US. Yeah? So you must have this curiosity. Yeah, by having this curiosity, you will always learn. You learn something new, and when something unexpected happens, instead of ignoring it, you study it. Yeah, because a lot of things happen in life. A lot of good things happen in life unexpectedly. Yeah. I have story about penicillin. Very long story about penicillin. Yeah, we will discuss this when we discuss about vaccine and drug. Yeah. So Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin by accident as well. Okay. So, all right. A lot of things you can learn from how this, you know, this great people discover something. They don't plan it. It happens by accident. Yeah, it happens by accident. They don't plan it. The importance of SDS page. This is something that you know, in our history plays a very important role in the discovery of important molecules. Show full screen. Right. Okay. All right. And then another thing, yeah, another physical properties of protein that we have to know is isoelectric point. Yeah. So I say isoelectric point is the pH at which a protein has zero charge. So kita kena tahu dekat pH mana protein tu dia ada zero charge. Yeah. So this can be calculated or can be studied using experiment. Yeah. Again using isoelectric focusing. Maybe you tak pernah dengar, tapi I think you learn this code dalam CHM 3401. Yeah. I remember in CHM 3401 we discussed a bit about isoelectric focusing, yeah. But in case you forgot, or in case you did not learn that during CHM 3401, so this is how we do isoelectric focusing, yeah. So we have to prepare a gel, yeah. But kalau SDSP gel dia dalam kaset, eh? This one in the tube, yeah. So we prepare a gel in the tube and in different pH. Ya, so atas dengan bawah tu different pH. It has a gradient pH ya, from 9 to 3. Ya, yang ke atas tu 9, lepas tu 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 sampai 3. And then we put our protein from the top, ya, and then we run electricity. Ya, negative at the top, positive at the bottom, and then our protein will run. And our protein will stay at the pH where the charge is 0. Ya, macam protein ini dekat atas, pH dia around 9 kan. Protein yang dekat atas nih, dia punya isoelectric point is 9. Maknanya apa? Maknanya dalam pH 9, dia punya charge is 0. Ya. Protein dia akan travel as long as it has charge. Ya. So masa dia sampai dekat pH, ya, dekat tengah nih pH dia around 7 kan. And then when the protein stops, maknanya the isoelectric point of that protein is 7. Dia tak bergerak, dia stop. Yeah. And then other proteins will move, yeah, depending on their isoelectric point. They will stop at certain pH. Okay. So this is the process lah. Yeah. So the protein will stop migrating at pH exactly at their isoelectric point. Sebab dia tak ada charge. Yeah. Kalau isoelectric point di pH 7, masa dia sampai dekat pH 7, dia akan stop. dia akan berhenti. Oke, sebab apa? Sebab dia tak ada charge. Dia tak ada charge dalam pH 7. Ya. Tapi protein lain, they will keep traveling until they arrive at certain pH, yeah, similar to their isoelectric point, and they will stop. You can calculate as well. Yeah, you can calculate. Yeah, there are plenty of software that can calculate the isoelectric point. Yeah, once you know the sequence of your protein, then you can calculate the isoelectric point. Yeah? Why we have to know isoelectric point? First is, if we know the isoelectric point, we can avoid that pH for the application of our protein. Maknanya macam if the isoelectric point of our protein is 5, maknanya masa kita guna protein tu kita kena tak boleh letak dalam pH 5 lah. Sebab kalau kita letak pH 5 nanti dia precipitate, it will become precipitate. Yeah, it will become precipitate. Maknanya vaksin, kalau protein dalam vaksin tu isoelectric point 5, so we have to adjust the pH to either below 5 or above 5. Yeah. Yang kedua, if we want to keep the protein, we want to store the protein in a long time. Yeah. Kita nak simpan protein dalam fridge. Selalunya kalau kita simpan protein dalam bentuk precipitate. Yeah. We have to precipitate the protein, become solid, so it's more stable. Then we can keep the protein in a very long time. Yeah. So we keep the protein in the pH similar to their isoelectric point. Yeah. So kalau isoelectric point dia 5, pH 5, so we adjust the pH to pH 5, the protein will become precipitate sebab charge semua hilang. Yeah. The protein becomes neutral, it becomes precipitate, so we can keep the protein inside the fridge for long time. It's more stable. Yeah. Tapi masa kita nak guna, yeah, as a vaccine or in any other application, kita adjust pH dia. Yeah. Kita letak, for example, kita letak base, kita tukar kepada 7, then the protein becomes soluble. Then we can use for any application. Masa simpan, kita adjust balik pH 5, kita simpan. Yeah. The protein become precipitate. Yeah. Alright. And this is another physical properties, yeah, which is hydrophobicity. Yeah. So we want to know whether the protein is hydrophobic or not. Yeah. It's very important, yeah, as I mentioned when I start my lecture. If the protein is too hydrophobic, then the application is very limited. Yeah. We cannot inject this protein to human. Otherwise, it will become very painful, yeah, because it's not soluble. Ya, masuk darah je, macam batu kan, masuk darah je, masuk dalam kita punya blood circulation, it will be very painful lah, because it's not soluble. Yeah. So hydrophobicity is important to predict the solubility of the protein. It can be predicted, yeah? It can be calculated if you know the sequence of your protein. So inilah, from here we know that hydrophobic protein is yang light blue. Yang light blue itu is hydrophobic protein, ya. Phenylalanine, alanine, leucine, methionine, isoleucine, tryptophan, proline, valine. Those are hydrophobic amino acids. Once you have more of these hydrophobic amino acid in your protein, then you can expect that your protein is hydrophobic. Yeah. Another physical properties is molar extinction coefficient. Yeah. So we have to know this coefficient because we use it to calculate the concentration of our protein using spectrophotometer. Yeah. So we'll calculate the concentration using equation. Yeah. Absorbance equal to molar extinction coefficient times B. B is the length of the cuvette times C. Yeah. C is the concentration. Yeah. So by knowing the absorption, kita boleh baca kan, dari spectrophotometer kita boleh baca, ya, yeah. By knowing the absorption, yeah, and then we know the molar extinction coefficient, we know the size of the cuvette, normally 1 centimeter, then we know the concentration of our protein, yeah. So again, A equal to epsilon, yeah, molar extinction coefficient is epsilon times B times C. 3402, ingat lagi tak? Lambert-Beers law. We use that equation. Yeah. Dah lupa dah. One thing that I always tell my students, when I teach 3402, there is one thing that you cannot forget for the rest of your life. One thing, satu saja, Lambert-Beer's law. Dari 3402. You can forget all things, other things. But one thing that you cannot forget from 3402, Lambert-Beer's law and its equation. A equal to epsilon times B times C, because you will use this in all spectrophotometers. This is the fundamental of the how spectrophotometer works. You cannot forget Lambert-Beer's law for the rest of your life until you die. Right? So if you forgot, go back to 3402, baca balik what Lambert-Beer's law is. Okay? Ada dia punya equation. A equal to epsilon times B times C. A is absorbance, epsilon is molar extinction coefficient, B is the length of the cuvette, 1 centimeter normally, and C is the concentration. So if you know the absorbance, you know the molar extinction coefficient, you will know the concentration. Yeah, and molar extinction coefficient can be predicted. If you know the sequence of your protein. Yeah. So all these websites can be used. Yeah. XPC. Yeah. XPC it has various tools to calculate the properties of your protein. Yeah. You just put the sequence of your protein, and then all these tools will tell you about the PI, ya, dia punya isoelectric point, molecular weight dia berapa, extinction coefficient dia berapa, hydrophobicity dia berapa, ya, it will tell you. Ya. And it's free, ya, it's free. So your job is just to put the sequence of your protein, and you will get all this information from this website. Ya. And then another thing that you can predict is secondary structures. Yeah, secondary structure of your protein, either alpha, beta, or turn, it can be predicted. Boleh, ya. Guna apa? XPC can calculate for you as well. Yeah. So there is a algorithm, yeah, implemented in XPC that will calculate the secondary structure of your protein. It depends on, you know, whether you have hydrophobic amino acid, hydrophilic amino acid, and from there, you will get theoretical secondary structure of your protein. These are the algorithms implemented in different software to calculate the secondary structure of your protein. Yeah. So, okay, I'll skip this. Yeah, this one is if you have alanine, cysteine, leucine, methionine, glutamic acid, glycine, histidine, lysine, then most probably you will have helix structure. If you have valine, isoleucine, phenyl, tyrosine, tryptophan, threonine, most probably you have beta. But if you have glycine, serine, aspartic acid, asparagine, and proline, most probably you have turn. But as you know, in the protein, we have a mixture of amino acid, right? So based on this preposition, the algorithm can calculate whether your protein is alpha, beta, or turn. Yeah. So this is another software, plenty of software, hundreds of free software that can calculate the protein secondary structure. Yeah, you just, the only information they need from you is the sequence of the protein, the composition of amino acid of your protein. Put it, and then they will calculate it for you for free. Yeah. Okay, this is a quiz. Yeah, you can submit it today. Yeah, by 12, by midnight. Yeah, very easy. Yeah, you can do it within 5 minutes actually. Yeah. So you take protein from UniProt database. UniProt itu apa? You gonna Google lah. Yeah, you're gonna Google UniProt database and you put the code P03472. Yeah, and then your job is you calculate the molecular weight and PI. PI is the isoelectric point, and then you identify whether this protein has transmembrane region. Yeah, transmembrane region maknanya dalam protein tu dia ada region yang dia masuk dalam membrane. Yeah, sama macam water channel. You remember my lecture, right? Water channel is located at the membrane. Yeah, located in the membrane. Yeah, so dia dekat pintu, dekat dinding tu dia macam pintu. It will allow the water molecule to enter the room. Yeah, so predict whether this protein has transmembrane region. Macam mana? You kena you from UniProt. Yeah, so I let you to enjoy UniProt. Yeah. And then you predict the secondary structure also in UniProt. Yeah. So if you go to the website, yeah. So I'll show you the website. Yeah. Agent, secondary structure. Yeah. So semua tu ada dalam Uniprot. Mana tadi? Okay, semua ada dalam ni. Tengok sebelah kiri. A lot of information on the left side. Tapi you kena inilah, you have to extract the information that you need. Yeah. So I give you time until midnight lah to have fun with this website. Yeah. Just explore, just have fun. Nothing will go wrong by clicking one button in your computer. Your computer will not explode. Just have fun. Yeah. Click here, click there. Baca sini, baca sini. You know, you nak explore other proteins pun boleh. Yeah. Proteins involved, you know, in COVID pun boleh. You just put in the search column here. COVID-19, you know, you can see spike protein, all the mutation, all the variants. Have fun. Yeah, please have fun with this. Yeah, spend your weekend with this. You know, to get as many information that you want. But for your quiz, you need to submit it by midnight lah. Yeah. So you just type it in Microsoft Word, and then put your name, metric number. You upload it in Putra Blast. Yeah? I will provide you with the link for submission. Yeah? So by midnight. All right. Any questions?